Clarice, your work looks across so many different contexts. Why don't you go first, and I'll fill in.
That's sort of the question, I think, Alex. And I think it's a really difficult question to answer. And I don't know that there is one right answer and, one approach that's going to work for every plan. In general, you're focusing on the ESG aspects here, but of course, in a broader sense, we believe that these ESG investments or ESG funds should be assessed just like any other investment in the plan. But, if the idea is to measure them on ESG metrics, in addition to those traditional measures, there are different ways that you can approach this. Organizations like MSCI and Morningstar with Sustainalytics, they have their own ESG research and ratings businesses. So using something like MSCI's ESG fund ratings as a way to objectively monitor funds in a comparable way also might be a good place to start. But I do think it's important to know that all of these different, and without getting into too much detail here, it's important to know that all of these different ratings providers will have different research and ratings methodologies, and that means that their assessment, of the same company or the same fund could look different. And I'd say, in addition to that, measuring a fund against an ESG ratings methodology that they themselves might not rely on or follow, that could confuse matters as well. So, we generally like to focus on the fund's own intentions and stated objectives and try to measure success relative to that. And many investment managers today that do offer ESG funds also produce, have their own ESG research and produce their own scoring for companies and for their product overall. So measuring them against that standard, might be a more fair approach. But all that said, those third-party ratings providers like MSCI might be a good place to start. We'd of course caution against making decisions based on any one, sort of ESG rating or putting too much weight on that. But in terms of sort of monitoring and being able to compare, that could be a good place to start.
Yeah. I would say it's so interesting to observe that, again, the questions we have at a company issuer level are the exact same questions that are now bubbling up to a portfolio and product level. And so, in the early days of my work in this field, so many folks who, are already pressed for time and have a lot of things they're trying to consider would just kind of roll their eyes and say, oh, can you just give me a number? Like, I'll look at the number, but I just want to be able to do this like in a very easy kind of shortcutted way. And I can actually give you a number, but it's not very satisfying. And it doesn't give you any chance to get at the richness of what's underneath that number. So just like I would never describe a stock's fundamental characteristics with a single number, it's very hard to think that that's a great solution to describing complete sustainability characteristics for either a company we're invested in or a portfolio. Because of that, we do some really extensive reporting on the sustainability and impact characteristics of our portfolios every year. I will tell you it is stunningly labor intensive to do, but we think that that's the best way to really, in a sincere, authentic way, link our investment process with what we're seeing in terms of outcomes. And we're hopeful that creates a little bit more of an informed dialogue with all our different clients and investors, as opposed to just sorting high to low on someone else's